It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented this week by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're glad to have you with us. And we're glad, Ray, to be talking about the Kentucky Derby this week because we haven't spent a lot of time, due to other issues in the industry, talking about this year's Derby. We figured now is a perfect time. We've got the Florida Derby coming up tomorrow and the big 100-point races over the next couple of weeks. So, one of the things that's obvious about this Derby trail is it's been a little bit different than the last few years. There isn't one standout horse as we've had like with Justify or American Pharoah or California Chrome, and long shots have been winning some of these prep races. So what storylines grab you?
Well, for me, it's two trainers that have have had tremendous careers. They're in the Hall of Fame, and they have yet to win a Kentucky Derby. And that's Bill Mott, based in the East, and Richard Mandella, based in the West. And both of them have very legitimate chances to win this year. They not only have they not won the Derby, they've really only had a handful of starters in it, and they don't approach horse racing the way a lot of trainers do, which is, how do I win the Kentucky Derby? They've kind of put a lower priority on it than other trainers have, and we'll see with the Florida Derby. Bill Mott has Hidden Scroll in there, and that's his big horse. He's also got Tacitus, who won the Tampa Bay Derby. Richard Mandella won half of the Rebel Stakes, one of the divisions of the Rebel Stakes with Omaha Beach, and he's got a second horse in there too. But to me, that's really an interesting storyline. These two trainers that have made it, but have yet to win the big race.
And I'll throw another name in there who's maybe an old school guy too. Of course he is, Shug McGahee, who has won the Derby with Orb, but this year he has Code of Honor, who looks very legitimate and is in the Florida Derby tomorrow and may be the big threat there, especially from off the pace. So it's good to see Shug have a big horse because everybody loves Shug, and when he has a good horse, he's like the two you mentioned, Mott and Mandella. They don't always point for the Kentucky Derby, but when they have a horse they think can win it, then they go. So obviously Code of Honor is in that category. The big two that everybody talks about every year, Baffert and Pletcher, do have contenders, but they're not quite on the level of the ones I mentioned earlier. And Pletcher especially. I mean, he's gotten a couple in with points, but they're not the big-time contenders that we've heard in the past. And same with Baffert. I mean, Game Winner and Improbable both lost narrowly in those Rebel divisions. And I think part of this is because of what happened at Santa Anita, the closure, and the detour. So his horses may be a little off their game at this point.
Yeah, Baffert's going to be tough. Both those horses ran good in the Rebel, and I think he's probably had to interrupt his training a little bit because of the closures at Santa Anita and all of the rain that they've had before the closure. And Todd Pletcher is kind of a mystery to me as far as what's happened to all of his 2-year-olds turning 3 this year. It looked like going into last weekend that he wasn't going to have anything. Then he ran second in one of the races and had to go to Sunland Park to get his first Derby prep win of 2019 in the Sunland Park Derby. So he's got more to come. I think we've got a week from Saturday. We'll have the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass, where he's probably going to be represented. So he could still end up with his typical 3 or 4 horse or 5 horse Derby contingent.
One of the other themes that I'm seeing is just, again, they're just not racing as often. So we're not really having a grip on which horses we should be focusing on because they just haven't been racing much. I mean, the ones that are coming into some of these big prep races have only had 1 start this year. So, I mean, that makes a difference, and they grow up physically a lot between 2 and 3. So you never know what you're going to get by the time March and April comes around with a horse that hasn't raced since the fall last year.
Yeah, that's true. The lightly, the one or two preps seems to be the norm now. It used to be like, could you win the Kentucky Derby with just two preps? Now that just seems to be what everybody's doing with their top horses, and it's the new normal, I guess. One other thing, completely unrelated to prep races and all that, is John Court, 58 years old. He won. He and Willis Horton teamed up to win one of the divisions of the Rebel Stakes, and it would be great to see John Court get another Derby mount. He hasn't been in the Derby since he rode Will Take Charge for Willis Horton. Let's hope he gets to keep his mount, and who knows? 58 years old, that would be great to see him win the Derby.
And the horse that he has, Long Range Toddy, is nothing to sneeze at all. That's a pretty decent horse, and he ran well in that race. He was coming. So, he has that style probably coming from off the pace that, if they go fast enough in the Derby, he could certainly be there. So that's a good storyline. I agree. This weekend we have 3 Derby preps. There's actually 3. One of them is in Japan, and it's doubtful, the way that we're reading it, that the winner of that race will actually come over, because the horse that from Japan that is likely to come over if he gets points is actually in the UAE Derby, where there's a $2.5 million purse. And we talked yesterday in the Triple Crown News Minute about the UAE Derby's lack of history towards the Kentucky Derby, although maybe it's just dubious history, because the last 2 winners, even Mendelssohn, who ran off by 18.5, the last 2 winners, Thunder Snow, Mendelssohn, have finished dead last in the Derby. So is there any hope for the UAE producing something this year?
No, other than your last place pool selection horse, probably.
Yeah,
no,
there's actually a filly.
There's a filly in there that's the favorite, and I just can't see her doing well. And no, I think the UAE Derby is a really weak, even for that race, I think it's weak. And it's been a weak race traditionally. So no, I think it's a really bad race.
Yeah, and there's 3 U.S.-based horses coming over for it, but a U.S.-based horse has never won the UAE Derby, so there's no good history there as well. The other race, of course, is the Florida Derby. How do you see this race? We've got Code of Honor and Hidden Scroll, who got fried on the front end in the Fountain of Youth.
I know that they're going to try to make Hidden Scroll relax, but it's one thing to do it in workouts at Payson Park where it's nice and quiet, but it's another to do it at the racetrack. And Maximum Security, who won an allowance race by 11 lengths or so, sprinting, is going to give Hidden Scroll all he can handle on the front end. The fractions are going to be fast, and I don't see the Florida Derby being any different outcome than the Fountain of Youth, where Code of Honor just rolled by everybody. He's going to be that much better this time. I think Code of Honor is right now is the horse to beat in the Kentucky Derby.
I would agree with that. I would agree that he is the horse to beat, and he's probably going to get a good pace set up here. I like Hidden Scroll, though. I think that's a nice horse, and I know Bill Mott knows what he's doing, and he's getting a rider switch to Javier Castellano, which is a pretty good rider change. So I believe if Mott thinks he can relax, I believe him, and we might see something impressive from Hidden Scroll. Let's not forget Todd Pletcher, who has won this race several times, has a horse in here named Current, who has never run on fast dirt. So I'm keeping an eye on that horse at 15-1, because I remember Danza a few years ago going off at 41-1 in the Arkansas Derby and winning by 9 lengths. A Pletcher horse going off at 41-1 and winning by 9 lengths. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one, since he's never seen fast dirt before.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a chalk player normally, but I think Code of Honor is solid. He's going to get the perfect pace scenario, and I just see no reason that he can't handle this group.
Well, here's a question. In fact, it's our poll question. Which Kentucky Derby prep race do you think will produce the winner of this year's Kentucky Derby? Let us know at PaulickReport.com. Share your thoughts with us. Ray, this week's Friday show is presented by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Tell us a little bit about that group.
Well, it's a great program, first of all. I think they distributed something like $30 million in awards last year. And there's a lot of state programs, but this is a state program that had not one but two Eclipse champions last year in Unique Bella and Shamrock Rose. In fact, it was the third year in a row a PA bred was an Eclipse Award champion. That's a pretty remarkable feat for a regional program. They've got new sires, they're Grade 1 winners. It's a good time to start thinking about the Pennsylvania bred program right in the middle of the breeding season now.
All right, good information. That's going to do it for this edition of the Friday show. We'll talk to you next time.